crime, and I'm not really sure what else it's going to be fun of. But just before I explain how it works and hand over to Mr. Skelton to do a few of the vital parts of the four blokes, I'd just like to say that on the screen, you have Neil Broadfoot. Wave, Neil. Neil's fourth book, No Quarter Given, or his fourth book in the Connor Fraser series, No Quarter Given, is out this September. Is that right?
That's correct.
Cool. We've got Mark Leggett, who has 3 books with another Connor called Connor Montrose. No, the two of them didn't work together to actually write the books with them. And then we have Douglas Skelton, whose 4th Rebecca Connolly book, Rattle of Bones, is out in August. Third Rebecca Connolly book. Douglas, I'm counting the one we did between us. The joint one is one novel as well. And then my name's Gordon Brown, but my latest book is written under the name Morgan Cry, and it's called 31 Bones, and it's set in Spain. Now, just to explain what you're going to see, if it works, is we're going to try and make up a crime story live in front of you. The way we will do this, in a moment, Douglas will draw a weapon and a protagonist from the massive list that we've been sent. So thanks very much to everybody that put down a weapon and put down a protagonist. After that, what will happen is we have to draw one of the authors to start, Neil, me, Douglas, or Mark, and they will disappear to write a couple of hundred words to start the story. Meanwhile, we will answer some of the questions that you've sent us, or some of the questions that pop up on the screen. And then when the person is finished writing, they will read where they've got to. And then what will happen is we choose one of the other authors to keep the story going. And hopefully by the end of an hour, we have a crime story. Maybe not, often not, but we will have something by the end of it. But there are some other important bits we need to do. And to do that, I need to hand over to Mr. Skelton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Very kind of you. Gordon's basically covered much of it. The only thing is I have to introduce the 5th member of our team, the very important member of our team. And we usually have a fanfare, but we don't. And that is the sacred tea cozy of inspiration. And it is this that I will be donning should my name be drawn to write. But first, I'm going to use it to produce. Now, these are the suggestions that we got for the weapons, and thanks to everybody for sending them all in. So in they go. I'll give it a wee shake around. And once I've done that, I'll give the suggestions of the weapon a wee sugar as well. And here we go. And the weapon will be. This comes from Lee Graham, and the weapon of choice this evening is a Zimmer frame.
Okay.
A Zimmer frame.
Quite appropriate for us lot, right?
Right, and I'll tip them out. Now, the next thing I've got to draw are the protagonists. Again, thank you to everybody who sent in suggestions. Some of you sent in for weapons and protagonists, but obviously we're drawing them separately. But thanks anyway, all very helpful. Later on in the programme, I'll go through some of the other ones that we didn't use, because I think you really need to hear some of them. So remind me to do that. And our protagonist for tonight is from Patricia Forsyth, and it's a butcher.
A butcher.
Okay, so that's a butcher and a Zimmer frame.
In the library.
Okay, and the first author. In go the names. Here we go. Who's it going to be? Big breaths. And it's me.
Go for it, Douglas.
That wasn't the way that was planned. Okay.
Right, so Douglas will now disappear off to write about 12 words. That's
and he'll wear the hat while doing so.
And we'll take, if there's questions that come up, we'll take them. And if they're not, we'll take the questions that were sent in earlier. So I'll kick off. I've got one of the questions here for Marlene Goosebrook. I hope I've said that right. If I haven't, it's a mistake. How do you crime writers come up with all these ideas for murder scenes? I mean, I have a pretty bad mind myself, but you writers always surpass my expectations. Well, Marlene, apart from the obvious that we actually kill people, then I'll hand over to Mr. Broadfoot to tell us, where does he get his murder ideas from?
I was a quiet, sensible, gentle soul.
Psychopath.
And then I met Douglas Skelton, and for some reason my aggression and violence levels just surged. We've said this before, writers have magpie minds. And we will see certain things and we'll ferret them away and then use them. For example, my very first book, Falling Fast, I was trying to think of a way to write a crime novel. It was a beautiful day. I was walking through the centre of Edinburgh. I looked at the Scott Monument and I suddenly thought to myself, I'm going to throw somebody off the top of that. The book was born, as you do. I was at Stirling for Bloody Scotland. I was watching the football match up at the top of the Toon in the Bowling Green. It was the Scotland and England football writers. And somebody kicked the ball and I thought, this would be a great place to dump a body. Go better, this would be a great place to dump a decapitated body. And it's just, because you're thinking that way, because you're always looking for the next story, you're always asking the what if, what if, what if. When you see something, it'll just trigger in your imagination and you're away to the races. I wish I could say there was a plot or a plan to doing it. It's just these things hit you and you just got to run with them.
Yep. I got one for me when I was working on the new book, set in Spain. And what set that off? I was sitting in the pub, surprise, surprise. And I was watching the footy. And there was two guys behind us who weren't watching the footy. They were just talking to each other. And the only two words I heard were laundry and money. Now, they could have been talking about laundry as in they were off to wash their clothes and they didn't have change, right? But when I heard them say that, I suddenly thought, I wonder what they are talking about. And I kept catching about every third word, every bits and pieces. And I got this idea that there was something going on that I shouldn't have been listening to. And it was to do with a lot of money being washed through somewhere. Now, I might have got that completely wrong, but I suddenly started thinking, what happens if you have to wash a lot of money and you're in Spain? How do you clean it? And that's kind of what started off the book, is how do you clean money? And so I went surfing on the internet. That's a mistake. Surfing on the internet, asking how do you launder money gets you onto some really weird websites, but you can find out. And I think that, for me, that's where ideas start. You hear something, you see something, you think of something, or sometimes it's just a blank page. Mark?
You know, I was trying to think the first scene, and the first scene in the book where somebody actually got shot, and it was a hotel lobby. Well, it was a hotel corridor. It was only because at the time I was living mostly in hotels, and I had a guy come out. I thought, this has got to be, I don't want a great big scene to go on here. I just wanted to suddenly come out and go, and he's walked into the wrong person. So if you ever, you know the hoodie tops people wear, if you're he's concealing a gun, and if you conceal a gun in a hoodie top, it's a bad idea, because hoodie tops are saggy and pistols are heavy. So you put a pistol on a hoodie top and it hangs down and go, that's quite a weapon you're carrying there, young man. There's no point trying to conceal that. So yes. I had to walk out of a hotel lift into a corridor. Turns around, first thing he sees is the baddie. The baddie looks down and went, "You've got a gun," right? Boom, boom, boom. Then all the shooting further. So that was the first scene I wrote, because I didn't want it to be spectacular. I just wanted to be, I don't know what was going to happen next. Anyway, it all ended tremendously badly with shots fired very badly in panic, as usually people do. And that's another good thing on the internet, as Gordon was saying. If you want to see how people react with guns in situations, go look at the Mad Yanks. And honestly, they could fire a pistol in Dundee and be lucky it hit Scotland, frankly. The internet is a great thing.
There is a downside to the internet. Someone's just asked the question, have you ever typed anything in the internet and got where you didn't want to get to? The answer to that is frequently.
Many times.
The scariest one
all too very often, yeah.
I was writing one of the Craig McIntyre books. I can't remember. I think it's the second book, Furthest Reaches. And I was wanting to know not how to kidnap the president. That wasn't what I wanted to know. I wanted to know what security a presidential candidate had. Like, if you decide to stand for president, you get special treatment. So I went onto the internet and I'm typing in, trying variations on kidnapping presidential candidates, security for president. Have you ever had the FBI badge come up on your screen? It loosens your rear end somewhat when it comes up warning you're. So I shut it down. I was so scared. I didn't go back on the internet for the rest of the night. I was convinced I'd visited somewhere I shouldn't. In 10 minutes from whenever I went on there, they were going to come through the door. So after that, but I still do it. Still type stuff into the internet. It is a great place to find stuff.
So we've just invented a new challenge. Let's see who can get the FBI on their screen first.
Yes,
right, boys.
yes.
What we searching?
If you want, you can actually find them on Twitter and ask them questions.
You can ask
don't-
most people questions.
Yeah, but you can go to the FBI on Twitter and say, "How do I hit the president with a pie?"
And
they'll
we'll answer.
We'll be around there in 10 minutes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, before the end of this evening, Mr. Leggett's door behind him is going to burst open. But 4 guys in suits are going to charge in.
But it's interesting because what I found, it's not just the internet, it's who you can ask questions of that get on board. I did ages ago, I did a reading at Barlinnie Prison, and I met some really nice guys in there. I'm saying that it's not the prisoners, I met the guards. And they've been, I've said, well, some of the prisoners were okay, but like I just...
Is that where you go to meet men? That's
Yes.
interesting.
I know. It takes you a lot to get into the place, I have to admit. It's not the easiest club to get into. but once you join it, actually just asking them standard questions is just amazing because they're dead happy to help.
Yeah.
Because I just recently wanted to know what the visiting process was in the 1980s. Had it changed? And I just asked them and I got an answer really, really quickly. I think I know quite a few authors who've got people, I don't know about the two of you, but I don't know if you've got anyone. I know quite a few with police in the email, or they've got forensic scientists in the email. And as a result, if they want to ask a question rather than the internet, they go to them. Do you use anything like that?
I have some contacts, yes, in various places I can ask questions of. One of the things I was going to mention there about experts is when I'm not doing writing, I'm doing editing. And a lot of things I see come across my desk is people getting guns and the use of guns completely wrong. And if there's one thing that gets the finger picking maulers wrong in America is getting putting a safety catch on a SIG thing, and they all just getting it and they rip the shit out of you. So do your research for guns. It's all on the internet. There are actually books called, I think it's a book called, it's a short pamphlet, not a book, it's a book. No, short pamphlet about how to write guns in books. Because people keep saying like the whiff of cordite, and frankly, cordite has been used since about the 1950s. Right? Nobody uses cordite, so there is no whiff of cordite. It's propellant. But get those things right. You've got to get the details right, and you convince your readers. Because Gordon will tell you about the handbrake moment. Because you get something wrong, they go handbrake, books across the room.
That's true, Neil. That the handbrake moment is for me. I'm not going to say what book, but I just hit one, and after about 100 pages, stopped. And I hate to say that, but I'm getting too old to hang on in there when somebody's just lost me completely. And it's a bad thing to say because I'm sure I've done it to a few people by mistake.
It's easy done.
No, I think
The one that made me laugh out loud was somebody took a gun and fired a pistol and hit somebody at 200 yards. Not going to happen, right?
Oh, I don't know. I'll have a go. Just give me 5 minutes. I'll be back shortly. I might not be back.
Hold on. The tea cozy is off, which means...
Oh, it means it's Mr. Skelton has finished his scribbles and he is now about to read them to us if he can read his own typing.
Okay. They called him the Butcher, not because he was a dab hand with a ham haunch, but because he was particularly bloody when disposing of his victims. Having said that, he often impressed his family with his skill at carving the Sunday roast. He was a professional. If he needed someone removed without a trace, a parent, an inconvenient spouse, a business rival or partner, then he was the man for the job. He came, he went with such consummate ease that he also had another nickname, the Phantom. One wag had said it was more like a draft, but said wag wagged no more. He now resided in a rubbish dump in Lothian, and another in Perthshire, and Aberdeen, Dundee, and even Cumbria. He watched the old man stagger from his home, his hands resting on the Zimmer frame he needed to get around. The butcher thought of the array of knives and saws in the rear of his van. This fellow would be no problem to dispose of. There really wasn't much of him.
Okay, Douglas, who's next? To write.
Oh, right.
It's your job.
And we've got yes or no. I've got one job to do.
One job to do.
Put his hand in the bonnet.
Okay. And it's Mark.
Mark.
Cock. Right. All right, lads. I'm going on mute
Okay,
so you don't disturb
That's
me.
what I love about this, right? The enthusiasm and the love for the writing that comes through every time we do this.
Yeah.
It's just,
Right,
it's
where's the mute button?
inspiring.
There we go.
Right. So, I've got a question for the audience. Joe Singleton has asked the question: what would be your specialist subjects if you ever went on Mastermind, and why? And why not?
I know what Douglas's would be.
Which is
Film music.
yes.
Yep.
Because Douglas spends a lot of time listening to film music and reading.
Yeah.
I don't know what this says about Douglas or what he thinks of me, but a couple of weeks ago he's just moved, as you can probably tell by the
boxes.
chaos behind him. Well, you've actually tidied up now.
It's
You call
not
that tidy?
chaos.
And I went across to help him out, build a few bits of furniture, and I walked into the door and it's bloody Robocop that's playing.
What is it about film music, Douglas, that appeals so much?
I don't know. And you know, I've been asked that for so many years. I mean, I started being a big fan of film music when I was about 8 or 9. And I've no idea.
Can I ask a question at that point? See, when
Yeah.
you were 8 or 9, how could you hear film music over the thunder of dinosaur feet?
Oh God!
You know, age joke.
Sorry.
So, you know, if sarcasm is the lowest form of wit, then, you know, age joke. But I don't know. It just does appeal to me. And
Neil, if you had what would yours be then? Specialist subject?
God almighty, that's a good question. I honestly don't know because I'm not a specialist at anything. Being a journalist, I'm a bit of a, you know, jack of all trades, master of none, because we pick things up and in the time that you're working on that story, you become an expert in that story.
Yeah.
And then you send it and you forget it and it's gone. It's like the internet search histories we were talking about. You will research something for a book, and for the lifespan of that book and the edit process thereafter, you're an expert at that and you know it inside out. But then you delete the files and you move on to the next thing. So I don't know what my mastermind subject would be. Procrastination, maybe, when I'm starting a new book. House cleaning methods when I'm trying to avoid the keyboard.
no, the procrastination one, that's the one definitely for you.
Thank you, Louise Fairburn, who says, Neil, Irish whiskey, surely. Can I just point out, is one sub to another? Yes, she's just corrected it. Thank you. She spelled whiskey without the E, because it's Irish whiskey, it should always have the E.
Pedantic. I think my specialist subject would probably be obscure Scandinavian electronic music that no one else has heard of, and there's a good reason for that. Is I don't know that much of it, but whatever answer I gave, no one would know it's wrong. So it's the perfect. I reckon Mastermind, I'd be the perfect one because they just go yes to all 11 questions and I'd be through. Not a problem at all. I don't know what it would be. I think. See, when you see something, you know, you get people who say page 1 of the first Tintin book. I think that's cheating. You know, when they come up with a subject so narrow, they say, and then you get other people that say, you know, which got the entire history of the world, and you think, nah, you're a bit screwed there. Not sure what it would be. Other question we had in here was, if you were asking an expert, what kind of experts do you ask when you're writing a book?
Oh, that's a completely widely varied. Yeah. It depends on what you're working on and where the story takes you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've spoken to doctors, I've spoken to coppers, I've spoken to army, I've spoken to counsellors about grief and post-traumatic stress. I've spoken to civil engineers about laying out the trams in Edinburgh. It depends on where the story takes you. So it's not a case of, you know, I suppose it's like journalism in that way. You get to a point in the story, whether you're planning it or pantsing it, you get to a point in the story where a certain question has to be asked. So you go and find the person that will be able to answer you that question, whether that be in your contacts list or somebody that you need to find online.
Yep, Douglas.
Just as Neil said, it's you go to whoever it is that you need for whatever particular conundrum you're trying to crack. So it could be anybody. So if you're writing about, you know, refuse collection, you'll go to a refuse collector.
Yeah, I remember famously a story I was at CWA lunch. This has got to be about 10 years ago. Can someone tell Mark to put it on mute because we can hear him typing? No. I was famous.
He's just trying to prove he's working for a change.
I know. I was at a CWA lunch and I remember this happening. It was throwing it down with snow, chucking it down with snow, and we were at Enoch Square. And it was so bad that people were starting to say, how do we get home? And one of those, the gritter trucks went past. And I don't know who asked the question, but someone said to the question, if you chucked a dead body in the back of a gritter truck, it went down, would it go down, the thing that spins out the grit, would that chop the body off and spread it across the M8? So I think it may have been Carol Ramsey. I'm trying to remember who did it. Knew somebody in the council and phoned the council up to ask the question. And the person at the council went, well, I don't know, but I know someone in Rhodes that might know the answer. So then they went away, phoned the person in Rhodes, and we said, do you know if a body turns up in one of those trucks in the next few days, somebody in the council is going to go, do you know what? I had a phone call asking exactly that question about 2 days ago. If you want the answer, it can't chop up a body, by the way. It's not strong enough. It was a disappointing answer. So that's where we go. There's a question. It says, what's the oddest thing you've found during research?
I was doing some research down in Bristol and I found Neil Broadfoot, and that is definitely the oddest thing I've ever.
You do not know. You do not want to tell this story, Douglas, because... Shall I continue the story? About
No, just... What was the oddest thing you found then, Neil?
In research?
Yeah.
God. You know, I honestly don't know, because you're working in... I was talking about this last night. You're working in such a strange world that Googling how fast does somebody bleed out, what's the best art rate to hit, if you were going to silence somebody, if you were going to use a Fairbairn Sykes knife to cut somebody's vocal cords or whatever it might be. You're living in such a strange world that your feeling of what is weird gets reset constantly, because you're resetting to a new normal every time. So I'm not sure what the weirdest thing I've ever found is.
So we'll come back to it because Mr. Leggett has just finished and is due to read us. So, Mr. Leggett, where did you get to with your work?
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
yes.
Just to recap from Mr. Skelton, he watched the old man stagger from his home, his hands resting on the Zimmer frame he needed to get around. The butcher thought of the array of knives and saws in the rear of his van. This fellow would be no problem to dispose of. There really wasn't much of him. As the old man got halfway down the path, he turned his greying head and shouted back, "Get your arse out here, I'm not doing this on my own." And from the house there followed a line of people shuffling behind to keep time with his sedate pace. First, a Hare Krishna with a tambourine, a sausage, and a picture of Hitler. Then a very small nun on 6-foot stilts. And lastly, a Mormon who was evangelizing for Jesus in his own good time. Right, said the old man. Here's the deal. Twice around the park, stick it on YouTube and the money will roll in. Sister Evangelista, get the crowdfunding sorted and leave that Mormon alone. You'll break something off.
Really?
Oh, dear.
We're not even 20 minutes in.
We laugh. Right.
Who has to follow that?
Moving right along. So, and it's Neil.
Neil, on you go.
Good luck, fella.
You're on the wine already.
Did you
He's
not
taking the drink.
Good luck there, fella.
I had that poured specifically, so the moment that Mark passed the baton to me, because I knew this would happen. Whenever Mark, remember Dumfries, whenever Mark goes completely off piste, and you can spell piste 2 ways there, folks, decide amongst yourselves. It's me that has to pick up the pieces invariably. So, with that.
Right, okay.
And may God have mercy on your soul. Right.
Best of luck, lads.
Right, Mark, we're asking the question. What was the question? Oh, the weirdest thing you've had to research.
The weirdest thing I had to research was fat suits. I had to get fat suits. I had to have a character wear a fat suit or a disguise so that someone who knew her very well wouldn't recognize her. So she wore a fat suit and a wig, and she went from a sort of thin waif-like figure to like that. Anyway, he sees her getting out of a helicopter and just gets out of a helicopter and sinks into the soft. He went, no, that's not her. but later on, she had to get this fat suit off, which was probably the most comedic element of the entire book. How to get a fat suit off when you're horny.
Right. Alexander James Hawley has asked the obvious question. 23 minutes. What is it about nuns that's so appealing in this process? It's you've seen them
I
appear
don't
in the
know.
last two stories.
The
Ladies and
last
gentlemen, if you
two.
want to know,
Try every one of them. I think there's been a nun.
Mark had some tragic youth. I don't know what happened, but something scarred him for life. That means that somehow he can't get through 2 hours without mentioning the word nun.
I don't know. I made this. I think I started in Dumfries where I put a nun on the story, and then somebody else went, "Are you going to put a nun in again?" I went, "Well, I can't say no, can I? I can't say no." And when I'd done it a second time, they went, "I'm looking forward to the nun appearing the third." What have I done? What have I done?
It's actually a trigger for me because I used to go out with a nun. None of this, none of that.
Right, boom, boom.
Can I? There's a couple of questions here, which follows on from
Yep.
that. This one's from Carol Ramsey. Have any of you ever been sectioned? And if not, why not?
Twice. I tell you, it's not sectioned, but it's not being talked to in terms of like this is not a story but it's just a worthwhile hearing story. One of my friends recently spent 2 days in the doghouse because having sat with his mate for a night consuming alcohol, he decided for reasons that only known to him to try out his mate's son's electric scooter, which didn't
Hello, Douglas Skelton.
Hello.
Hello, Sam. Normally we do the scenes, but while Kelsey's frantically trying to sort her phone out, so drop in and say, "You've broken it. You 4 blokes, you've broken it. You've broken it. Can't trust you with a thing."
So what have I to do? Anything?
No, you sit there and just look beautiful while Cal sorts us out.
Well, there we are.
So I'm going to look at Tony Millington says butchered. Well done, Tony. So just until you've got somebody to keep you company. I don't think Neil knows anything yet. Do you know that you were just sat typing to yourself?
No, I didn't know it had gone off. What had happened? Has everything gone down?
Well, you
we
were
are still live. We are live.
All right, but everybody else went.
Yeah,
That's
Kelsey's
fine. Just leave me alone to do all the good stuff. That's... So where are the boys now?
2 sets of this. How weird is that? Right, I just had to close my Facebook. I could hear 2 sets of us then, and I couldn't figure out why. So, Chris calling me a comedian and ridiculous. I've just come in. It's a good job I've not started on the wine yet. Pat wants to know what red you're drinking.
I can't remember. It's just the bottle that I grabbed because Mark started talking.
Mine's
For the sake of sheer panic.
It's lovely. So,
Whatever
are
we've been
you
cooking
ready
with,
to read your bit?
Right. Where? Sorry, I'm just at the. Where are we right now? Who's on and who's off?
So I've got you and I've got Douglas. And
Right.
I'm not
Oh,
sure
God,
where
I'll be
everybody
left with a rump
else is.
with it. Right.
Oh,
Where
hello.
did Mark leave us?
Right, Neil, you read your bit out and keep going.
Right. Right, said the old man. Here's the deal. Twice round the park. Stick it on YouTube and the money will roll in. Sister Evangelisa, get her crowdfunding sorted and leave the Mormon alone. You'll break something off. The butcher watched this strange little procession emerge from the house and glanced at his coffee, wondering if the barista had added an extra shot of acid in his maple syrup. He closed his eyes, tried to blink to see the way. Felt disappointment well up in his gut as he was faced by an unaltered reality. They were there. They were really there. The chants of Harry, Harry, and the rustle of the tambourine grated in his ears. It would, he thought, be a pleasure to fulfill this contract. Mark had been the man with his Zimmer frame. Looking at the strange little processions, the butcher decided he would make a couple of extra choice cuts for himself. After all, what good was a nun if she wasn't going to run, stilts or no? Good luck with whoever gets that.
well, to be honest, there's only 3 of us. I think it should just go automatically to Gordon because there's no point in me taking the name out.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll type up. I'll do it.
And Neil, you and I will just need to continue.
Right, go on. And where were we? Sorry, I missed a bit. Where were we?
Well, I think just before we were cut off, I'd asked a question from Carol Ramsey.
Oh, he's back.
There's Mark back. Have any of you ever been sectioned? But never mind that. Just in case we get cut off again. I don't know what Gordon asked before. Mary Pickin has asked, why are there no women in your gang?
In the 4 blokes?
Yeah, I think that's self-evident in that it's, 4 blokes in search of a plot.
We welcome guest authors at all times.
Yes,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that we won't have honorary blokes.
Yeah, I mean, there's always weekends, Just me then?
I think, given what you just wrote, the less we talk about you and your proclivities, Mark, probably the better for everybody concerned.
Let's see what else have we got. These are from the questions that came in before the show. Eileen Brown wants to know, what is the best time of year to buy a new bicycle?
Well, then, I would say winter, since they've all fallen on their arse and smashed their faces.
Yeah. Here's another one. Irene Patterson is asking, could a dead dodo do a dastardly deed?
A dead dodo could indeed do a dastardly deed if a dead dodo was decided to do a dastardly deed. I'm not doing that again. That's
From a great height.
So, Irene, I think the answer to that is decidedly yes. She says she's looking for a job as a scriptwriter for a small but perfectly formed theatre group. I wonder which one that is.
I don't know.
no idea.
I was just reading the comments, and UK Crime Club said they're all here now. And I looked at it quickly, and I read it as Christ, they're all here now.
Just a very quick one when I'm looking at the comments. Patricia Forsyth, who I can't respond to in the chat, I said hello, hello, and yes, I will sign on the bin again.
So let's see. I'm looking at some of the other suggestions that we had, because I think it's, you know, it was nice as people made the effort. Let's see what we got. Speaking of Irene Patterson, she's obviously obsessed with dodos because her murder weapon was a feather from a dodo.
Right.
I can make that work.
Yeah. Mo Macquarie said an electric car suitably wired.
Excellent, I like that.
Good thinking, Mo.
Okay.
I mean, you could just die of boredom driving an electric car. You could do it that way. Made a hell of a long book.
Yeah, but the silent killers, aren't they? Because those things are creepy, but they just, you know, you turn around and there's something.
Just 10 chapters going, I hate my life, I hate my life, and then off a cliff.
Isabel Bliscoll suggested a phrenology head.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been a bumpy ride.
If I want to, if you get to see those phrenology heads, I want to go up to one, just be a wee rubber, take it out, and then write something else. If it's got here memory, you write cheese. This is the part of the Victorian stuff was dedicated to cheese.
Patricia Forsyth also suggested a haggis supper. Yeah, that would do you. That would do you.
Well, we got similar. The very first 4 blokes we did, was it not a frozen sausage pudding?
I think that's just you wishful
Black
thinking.
pudding. It was a frozen black pudding, was it not?
Was it?
Or am I confusing that with one of Douglas's books where he beats somebody to death with a frozen lamb chop?
Oh, yes, that's true.
Louise Fairbairn asks a good question. 3 of us have books out later this year. Mark, when are we getting a new book from you?
Oh, God. As soon as I
I
get
think
time,
the brackets there, the parenthesis is, because I really need to vent my spleen with a 1-star Amazon review about everything I hate from Mark Leggett. Close bracket.
Oh, my fans. Some of them are still alive.
When is your next book coming out? And what's it going to be?
I've got to write the bloody thing. It's
Actually,
called
I
Penitence.
read some of it and it's good.
Oh, you read
so
some
tell
of
us
it,
a bit
yeah.
about it.
It's about a man called Hector Lawless, who is a very solitary man, but not a lonely man. And without giving too much away, he is on the edge, is Mr. Lawless, and everything that he knows or believes is stripped away from him, and he loses. I'm not telling you. That's it. We shall see. I don't know. As soon as I can get some time, I'll start. In fact, I'm starting day after tomorrow to get back to it. And then I'll write it. I mean, I sent it off to the agent. He loved it, but he sent back a lot of changes to be made, and he was absolutely right. So it's a rewrite, but it's all planned out. You'll be glad to know, lads.
No, we'll skip past that part of the evening. But I have had a chance to read it, and it has been incredibly good, what I've read.
Cheers, mate.
And Douglas, your one's out in August?
Yeah, coming out in August, yeah. What's it called again? A Rattle of
Bones, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or
That's a hell of a thing
Skeletons
to give
Cry
to a
for
baby.
Help.
Yeah, so that's it. Third, Rebecca Connolly. The reason I keep forgetting the title is that I'm writing the 4th one at the moment, and it's called At the Moment Where Demons Hide, and I keep getting mixed up.
Well, you see, that would be more convincing if I wasn't sitting doing a launch for you. Back when we could do these things. And I said, and your book is called, and all I got, dear viewer, was this blank, empty look of a man completely adrift from reality.
Yes, but in my defence, you had just been speaking for a very long time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be here. I'm delighted to be here. with Douglas Skelton talking about his latest book.
There is that thing though, when you've written a book and you're on your new book and somebody asks you about a book that you've written before. The thing about writing books is the only book that's important is the one you're writing. Everything else does not matter. So when they say, you know that book you wrote about that scene, you go, no, I don't remember that book at all. And that, somebody said,
I had an experience today. I was talking to somebody about a TV documentary, and he was talking to me about one of my true crime books and something in there, and I could not for the life of me remember what it was.
Well, since we're talking about true crime, since we've embraced gritty realism this evening, I feel it's time to turn over to Gordon so we can get the next episode of this.
Yes.
Right.
So what you got for us?
We were at, the Mark had been the man with the Zimmer frame, but looking at the strange little procession, the butcher decided he would make a couple of extra choice cuts for himself. After all, what good was a nun if she wasn't going to run, stilts or no? He crossed the road and placed himself behind a tree, out of sight of the procession. He wanted the man with the Zimmer and the man with the Zimmer alone. No collateral damage. That is what the boss had said. Even if he wanted to make the exercise a little more interesting, he had to resist. Especially after the last time, when he'd taken out most of the shoppers at the local Asda with an RPG and some C4. That hadn't gone well. Timing was everything for the butcher. He knew that the old man had to die in a very specific manner. Beyond suspicion was the key. An accident. Something that the police would put down to the everyday, the mundane. As the sound of the tambourine grew louder and the rustle of the nun's wimple wafted at the breeze, he had an idea. So cunning, he wondered at why he hadn't thought of it earlier. He put away his chopper, for it was too gold to have it out, and prepared to pounce. To kill. Right, who's next?
Well, before I draw this, I need to pass this over to our non-expert. Do wimples rustle?
Wimples don't generally rustle, I have to say. I think, but that's poetic license. He could have.
This one had a lot of starch in it.
Well, he could have been the only nun with a wimple made out of brown parcel paper. Who knows?
Even better.
It's a special order of nuns.
Okay, here we go.
Order.
Who's next?
Here we go. And it is. Just giving it a right good shake, as we're trained to do. And it is Mark.
Ah, God. Right, I'm going on mute.
Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the insanity that is about to ensue, I apologise.
Mark is going on mute. We've wanted that for years.
So what were we talking about, lads? What was the question?
I was just going through some of the
Mark was talking about the book that you're writing is the only book that you remember and no other book. All your other books at the back kind of fade into the background.
If you're, it's the same with me. If I've ever asked about something from an old book, and then I've read my books before in the past and read it and thought, I've actually no idea I wrote that. I mean, seriously. Even the book that's coming out, because you've written one since then, people ask about it, and I'm kind of like, no, I'm on to the next book already. It's bad enough. I mean, it's bad enough at my age, when you forget things, but when you forget things that you wrote, you're kind of no idea. But it's true. You tend to focus on what you're working on.
Aye, and that's the problem with doing series fiction is that if you're doing a hardback launch, then a paperback launch, but you're writing the next book, and then you've got to talk about the book previous, but then somebody wants to talk about how the series started, you've got to try and keep 3 books in your head at once, and it's nigh on impossible. That happened, or did it? All right, okay, yeah. What book are we talking about? Yeah.
I also find I change series. I think this is quite interesting. I've been writing thrillers in America for a long period, and then suddenly changed. And when I wrote about the Spanish, it's expats. There's a bit of humour in it. It's Spanish crime. It took me a while to get out of the way I used to write because I was changing it. Actually, it was an interesting process, just letting go. Because I found, and as a result, I occasionally dropped back into it and suddenly found myself, I'm writing a thriller scene here from somewhere down in New York, and actually the guy's just sitting in a bar next to the Med having a beer. It's like, just, but for me, there was quite an interesting thing, changing the voice and changing the way it was written. I found that difficult, and as a result, the McIntyre books, of which I've got 4, I'd struggle if you asked me which one was which.
Yeah. How do you find it, Douglas, given that you've written, God, 3 series or something now? You know, you've gone from the Davy McCall books, where a guy who speaks through actions rather than words. Then you went to Dominic Quest, who was all about the words. Then you went to Rebecca, which was completely different. You had the Janice run in the middle. That's the one you couldn't remember the name of, by the way.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
So how was it called again?
The Janus run or Janice run?
Oh yeah.
But how do you find it difficult to change voice when you change series?
No, because there's obviously been a gap, in between them, because I wasn't writing the Davy McCall and Dominic Quest at the same time. It was Davy, then Dominic, then that other one that I can never remember, the Janus run, and then Rebecca. So it was one after the other. So I find it quite easy, and I've gone for something new as well now, as you know, which is another change of voice.
Did you find it weird when you gave a cameo to a certain character, or you might have given a cameo to a certain character?
Yeah.
And one series hit another, because that was 2 polar opposites of that character who might have been a cameo from a previous series.
Yeah.
Sorry, was it difficult to try and, because you've had a protagonist meet a protagonist, and were the 2 of them in your head warring for, no, I'm running this scene?
No. In that particular scene, it was Rebecca all the way, because it was from her POV. So it was her all the way. Had it been from, I might as well say it, had it been from Davy McCall's POV, that particular scene, then it might have been an issue, but I didn't. I just kept it with Rebecca. But in the Rebecca books, I also have a character from Tag You're Dead, the second Dominic Quest books, and she plays quite a big part in the last Rebecca book and in the new one. So it's really just to show that they're all part of the same world in a lot of ways.
But I'll tell you what's interesting on that question. Louise Fairburn, just thinking about voices, if you had to write featuring someone else's character, who would you choose? The strangest thing is, Neil, me and Douglas wrote a novella which starred Rebecca Connolly and Daniela Coulston out my new book. The strange thing is, when we wrote that as I wrote a bit, Douglas wrote a bit, I wrote a bit, Douglas wrote a bit, yeah? But it occurred to me at the end of it that you sometimes wrote as Daniela, which is my character, and I sometimes wrote as Rebecca, which is yours, and everybody who's read that novella can't tell who wrote what.
Yeah.
Which I get told before I did that with you, a lot of people said you can't write as a dual author, it just won't work. And I have to say, I didn't think it was particularly difficult. I actually thought it worked quite well.
You didn't tell me that before we started.
I know, I should have. I was actually told, on pain of death, don't go there. Don't work with Mr. Skelton. It will ruin your career forever.
That was me that said that, by the way.
That's true, it was him that said that.
No, I think it was. Of course, there were drafts, so we were able to smooth things down. But no, when we were doing that, there was absolutely no problem whatsoever. And if anybody's wondering, who wrote what bits, I did the good bits. So
Douglas has actually marked the good bits on Amazon in red. So if you buy the Kindle version, he's gone on and edited the whole thing.
This is mine.
This is mine. I wrote this. This rubbish bit's Gordon. Don't bother with this. I thought that was an interesting process, because having done it, would we do it again? That's the question. And actually, I ended up doing it as a short story last year with 4 other authors. The same thing. We did exactly the same thing again. It worked. So anyway, Mr. Leggett.
Oh, right.
Mr. Leggett has de-wimpled.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. I've got to read this shit, haven't I? Right.
That's very good, Mark. Right.
Wait, build yourself up, Mark.
Hold on. I've just...
Ladies and gentlemen, we
Hold on a
present to you this
moment.
evening Mark's shit sandwich. Take it away.
Right, hold on. I'll just find the bit where Gordon stopped.
To kill.
After all, hold on. He crossed through. An accident, something the police, now, gentlemen, something that the police was put down to the everyday, the mundane. As the sound of the tambourine grew louder and the rustle of the nun's wimple wafted on the breeze, he had an idea, so cunning at why he'd never thought of it earlier. He put his chopper away, for it was too cold to have it out, and prepared to pounce, to kill. To the left of a tree, a man pulled up on a bicycle. He was dressed head to foot in lycra, so tight you could not only tell his gender, but his religion too. The next few moments were some of the most pleasant that the butcher had ever experienced. He whipped out his chopper, and rather than using the blade, he beat the cyclist to death with the handle. Some things just take longer and are better for it. He then squeezed his frame into the lycra, which was much more entertaining than he had envisaged, and mounted the bike. After all, another coffin dodger mown down by a lycra-wearing wanker was just another terrible accident. He put his foot on the pedal. The old man looked up. Come on, another lap or I'll have a statue, a fat bag of Panther's cash, and my arse and a Spitfire by the weekend.
Right. Who's finishing it off? Because this will be the last go. Who's got to find an ending? Congratulations, Douglas, it's you.
Right, this is very important. Get a nice good shovel. Oops, somebody's fallen it. There we go. And it is Neil.
I knew that was going to happen.
Thank you.
It's done
Gods
free
of the
over
draw.
again.
Dear
Neil,
audience, let me just
10
explain.
quid if you get a sea shanty in, mate.
While we were talking earlier, I took all the names out, wrote Neil's name on 4 pieces of paper. I pretended that.
That's very good.
Pray for me, people.
Okay, right. Next question. Any more questions? We've got any questions from the audience in the last couple of minutes while Neil tries to finish that? Actually, we probably need to give you about half an hour for him to finish that.
I can't
So
see
the question at the moment, the question you always get asked is, what are you working on at the moment that you can tell people about?
Well, I think I've already answered that. Saying I'm working on Rebecca 4 at the moment. I've also written something else on Spec, which hopefully will appear sometime. And waiting for Rebecca 3 to come out in August.
Yep. Well, I've written Daniela 2, but it's not out till next May, and I'm doing something Spec as well. In fact, I can't say what it is, but I put a full stop on it today. I've only written one word. I've only written one word, then I put a full stop on it. It's just that classic of saying I'm actually writing a book. Someone was asking the question if any of us going to Harrogate this year. I'm not going.
No.
Douglas, are you?
No.
I don't know if Neil's going. Are you going, Neil? Yeah. Well, we're also planning for Bloody Scotland this year, but at the moment it's still, the dates are fixed, but whether it's digital or digital with a bit of live, we'll have to wait and see, because at the moment we still can't tell. It'd be nice if we could do something live at Bloody Scotland. The reason I'm mentioning this is I'm on the board of Bloody Scotland, but if we can do it, we can. It'd be nice to get back to something, but we can only do it when it's safe. I was talking to Mark earlier on. I said the big downside to me is when we do this live, getting reaction makes a big difference, and it's the same when you're doing a panel. It'd be good if you can get something like that. I was rather envious last night of all the kids at the festival. I emailed one of the guys I know in the festival work, and I said, see if you want to do a test with older people, we're available now. I could leave in the next 5 minutes. So someone said, beat someone to death with a haggis and eat the evidence. What other weapon would be easy to get rid of?
I was about to say a cucumber, but it's quite difficult to kill somebody with a cucumber.
I get told something interestingly. What's his name? Greaves, pathologist.
Jimmy.
No, his name will come back. That's terrible. His name will come back to us. It was asked a question. murder, he said, if you make it overly complicated, you get caught. Yep. He said it's the simplest ones. And he pointed out, and I can't remember where the cliff is in Aberdeen, but we were at Harrogate, this is about 7 or 8 years ago at Harrogate. And he said, there's a cliff up near, what's the castle where Dracula is supposed to have some sort of connection? I can't remember the castle's name. Yeah.
Slains.
He said, if you walk along the cliff up towards that, and you're on your own, and someone else is there on their own, and there is nobody else around, right? And you give them a wee shove, right? And he says it'd be extremely difficult to prove they didn't slip. Right? And as he's saying this, there's about 400 people in the audience writing it down. It's like, and that's what James Greaves. James, that's terrible, James. And James said, yeah, he said that's the thing that most people get wrong. They make it way too that idea of an ice block that you hang yourself on and it melts and it's disappeared. He said normally the simplest ones are the most complicated to figure because there's not enough to go on.
Aye. I was the same. I always thought the easiest way to kill somebody in my book was to go behind them with a half brick and crack it on their nut. That'll do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What was the old thing you said in the old days? A proper cosh that was made from lead powder or a really thick spring that would just crush the skull. These tips are free, everybody.
Yes. If it happens tomorrow, it wasn't us.
Yeah. How would you get rid of it? How would you hide the murder?
Yeah, actually, you got to get rid of the evidence. That's why they make push.
Get rid of the murder weapon. That's where the leg of lamb, as somebody suggested as well, the old Dal thing. And
oh well, the way I had, if it's powdered lead, you just open it up and it's gone.
Okay.
It's like ball bearings. You just scatter them.
Not sure. I think you still have some evidence kicking around, especially when they fell over in the ball bearings.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes the police. Here comes the police inspector. Push! Comedy moment.
It's like, I'm okay up on these stilts. Whoa!
I'm on these stilts and I've fallen in the ball bearings. Do you think there's something suspicious about this murder, sir?
We have a nun down. A nun down.
Oh no! It's perfectly natural. I think that'd be difficult. If you had to tell a story of yours in another country, which would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, my first 3 books were just everywhere, internationally set. And this one now is in Edinburgh. So I've done all the international stuff. I don't really want to do it again. I quite like Edinburgh.
Douglas, when you did Janus Run in New York, you had a real fear, a genuine fear that people were going to point out inconsistencies in the book.
Yeah.
And did anyone?
No. But
no, I read it, and
very few people read it.
So it wasn't a big issue.
Yeah, it did become an issue.
I read it, and I've been in New York, and it seemed totally natural.
Yeah, but I think I did get some native New Yorkers to read it, and a couple of, and a friend of mine read it. She had lived in New York for many years, and she said no. She said it's perfectly fine. There will have been wee things. I heard Mark earlier talking about guns. I think I got something wrong with a gun.
Oh, in trouble.
Yeah, which confused me because the point was, and I knew about this. I knew that automatics that don't have safeties or something like that, or
not necessarily. Just some guns don't have safeties. They've got a 2-stage trigger. That's
right. Well, it was whatever weapon it is that I had mentioned. I had said in the book that there was a safety catch, and I knew that I actually knew that weapon didn't have a safety catch. So it's a puzzle as to what I did, but I've never actually
never got it. I had, for me, when I was writing this, one of the things when I was writing 31 Bones, one of the things I realised was that this comes out in America tomorrow. It gets released in the States tomorrow, and I had to write an article for one of the blogs out there about the expat community, but more importantly about Costa del Crime, because that's kind of what it's based on. And therefore, the book's got a whole bunch of expats: a failed accountant, a failed racing driver, a failed this, that, and the other. And when I wrote it, one of the things, the question I've most been asked, which is not so much getting things wrong as hiding things, is it based on anyone you know that you've met when you've been out in Spain? And I keep getting asked that, and people, I actually thought people were asking because they were worried. I think the reason they're asking is because they want to be in the book. It's funny, it's just I've met people, I thought they were trying to say, oh, tell us who it is. I got someone, I mentioned a cafe in one line, and she's retweeted it about a dozen times. because she wants to be. And it's just the name of the cafe. So I'm beginning to wish I'd named all the people that I met in the book. I'd have got more publicity out of it.
You start charging.
If we do go and write somewhere something, for example, Hugo's on the line. We could get Hugo to tell us about where he lives. So we've got people we know.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a habit. The McIntyre books in this book, I happen to be lucky enough to own a place in Spain, and that's where this is set. I've set it in the town of Javia. I've just changed the name. The other books I did earlier, I set them all in America, all bar one of them which came back to Scotland. Every single place I set it, I'd been. And the reason I do that, and I do that with most of the books, is it's so much easier in my head to navigate the place and bring it to life. Because I'm just wandering around them. Turn left, you see this. Turn right, you see that. Go down the street, you see that. I just find it much, much easier. And also, my memory's so bad that if I tried to make it up, I'd forget. I'd be out the window.
There's Neil. Neil's ready for it.
Right, Mr. Broadfoot, you're last up. You've got to finish us with a blaze of glory.
Leggett, you are a bastard.
Right, come on, Neil.
Give it your best shot, buddy.
Right.
Go for
Where
it.
were we again? Hold on, give me a second.
Plucking up the courage.
The old man said, "Come on, a little lap and I'll have a statue of fat bag of Hunter's cash on my arse and a Spitfire by the weekend." The butcher pushed off, pedalling manically, wobbling as he built up speed. Tried to find a rhythm. Heard an old sea shanty suddenly sound in his head. Lyrics he had heard of his youth in Cornwall, where scrumpy trader, bad driving, and narrow roads had driven him to perfect his murderous craft. There was, after all, more than one way to cut someone off. He found his pedalling rhythm, the bike steadying, the old man in his sights. He bore down on him, intent on riding into the old bastard, taking him off his feet. It would hurt, not as badly as the lycra clinging into his crotch, but it would hurt. But then, what was art without suffering? The old man shuffled on as the butcher closed the distance. He could see the glint of the weak sun on the Zimmer frame, the liver marks on the old man's temples as he narrowed his field of vision on his target. Sudden musical rustle behind him, then a riot of sound, as though he'd been dropped into a drum kit. The world tilted, listed, turned, and then he was on his back, the Krishna grinning down on him, the tambourine he'd hit him with in his hand. The nun lurched over, with her phone out. "Well, have a butcher's at this," she said, grinning gap-toothed down at him. The butcher, and we've drawn him in, all on live stream. What an advert for our services. Nice work, old man. You said we'd make some money, did you want any money taken out? Have a butcher's as us. We're weird, but we're lethal. And Mark Leggett sent us.
Well done.
Well done, buddy.
Well, right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the four blokes with technical glitches in the middle, but we managed to get through it. We will tidy that story up a little bit and put it on the Four Blokes Searching.com website at some point down the line. So we'd just like to thank everybody. A couple of things we need to thank. One is the UK Crime Book Club for inviting us to be here at the festival. It's been brilliant. Thank you very much to Caroline and everybody else for having us on board. Thank you to everybody else that's tuned in tonight to watch. It's been brilliant to see the comments as they come up. Thank you to everybody that made comments earlier, whether they suggested weapons, whether they suggested protagonists for engaging. It's a great thing to see from our point of view, and it's a great way to engage with you all. And then I'd just like to say thank you from me, Gordon Brown. Come on, team, say thanks.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to everybody who tuned in, sent questions, made comments. It was all great. Thank you.
And all the best for the FBI listening in.
Yes, if they are. So, from Mark Leggett, Neil Broadfoot, Douglas Skelton, and me, Gordon Brown, only I'm Morgan Cry at the moment, we'd like to say thanks very much for tuning in. It's been great to be here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. It's been great.
Bye.
Cheers.